My guest today is David Koppel, a British photographer whose career took him from the heart of London's 1980s club scene to the fast-paced world of celebrity photojournalism. In the mid-80s, David became a witness to the cultural explosion that surrounded clubs, particularly the Limelight in London, where musicians, models, artists, and rising stars came together in a blur of music, fashion, and excess. His newly released book, a collection of photographs taken at the Limelight over 1986 and 1987, is both a time capsule and a celebration of that electric moment in London nightlife. Through his lens, we see the raw energy, the glamour, and the humanity behind the faces that defined an era. We talk about what it was really like to document that 1980s scene from the inside and what his images can tell us about the culture of celebrity then and now. David Koppel, welcome. First of all, I want to find out a bit about you, about what your introduction to photography was when you were young.
The first memory I have of a camera was standing on Bournemouth Beach, about 9 years old, and my father kneeled beside me and put his arm around me and told me to look through it was a Contiflex, I can't remember what the camera was, some 35mm film SLR camera, and I just looked through and I just thought, wow, this is what I want to do. But I didn't really know what that meant. I just looked through a viewfinder and just loved it and fell in love with that. And 10 years later, I was back at Bournemouth College doing a course in photography, film and television.
What was your sort of passion at that time?
People like Andre Curtes, which was kind of documentary style, very thought-provoking, lovely images of Paris in the 1920s. My uncle was a photographer with the Sunday Times for 30 years. His name was Frank Herman. And he had a dark room, and I used to spend Saturday afternoons around at his place. I loved he introduced me to people like Bill Brandt, and not personally, but the work of people like Bill Brandt, which I loved. I loved that kind of really moody black and white. Black and white was definitely my thing. And it was all kind of reportage and street scenes, nothing posed. You know, I hated pictures of people with their arms around each other smiling into the camera. That wasn't my kind of thing at all.
When you got this offer to go to the Limelight and take photographs, you were working as an assistant, but you weren't working in reportage, you weren't working in
No.
something similar, were you?
No, I was working with a photographer who was doing advertising. And in those days, you could go to an organization called AFAP, AFAEP, the Association of Fashion, Advertising and Editorial Photographers. And they used to advertise jobs for assistants. And I got this job with this advertising photographer, which I loved. I mean, it was in a studio, and I wanted to learn. I wanted to learn about lighting. I wanted to learn how to technically light something. Even though I didn't necessarily want to be a studio photographer, I wanted to learn about lighting, and that's where I could experiment and try out with different cameras and different techniques. And I started doing kind of more studio-based work, and I was learning the technicalities of photography. And then this offer came to do the Limelight. So I was working during the day as an assistant to a photographer, doing these kind of pack shots and pictures of towels wrapped up, and doing portraits of people and all sorts of various things that we used to do, a lot of which I can't remember because it was so long ago. And then suddenly I was asked to do the Limelight, which I knew nothing about 35mm flashes on top of cameras. I knew nothing about balancing kind of flash and ambient light, and it was a complete new world to me.
I mean, from the preface of the book, it does, you didn't want to do it, did you?
No, not at all, because I was so far out of my comfort zone. I didn't really like nightclubs. I didn't go to nightclubs. I didn't drink. I didn't know any celebrities, or I mean, I knew all the biggies, but I'd heard of the biggies, but I wasn't that interested in contemporary celebrity life.
I mean, you must have
So
been quite young. How old were you at that point?
22, 23.
So there you are. I mean, you said you didn't really like nightclubs. You didn't, I think
Yeah.
you didn't smoke or drink. So you
No, I
go out.
smoked. I smoked.
Oh, you
I
smoked.
definitely
So,
smoked. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I mean, you had to at that, that period. Everyone did. So you go to the Limelight that night. I mean, even for you, it must have been somewhat of a culture shock.
Yeah, I mean, I was completely out of my comfort zone, but I remember I walked in, and there was a couple there that I kind of vaguely knew, and they were ballerinas, and I got talking to them, and I just felt very relaxed talking to them, and yeah, I just felt quite comfortable right from the off, even though it was a culture shock. It was not a world that I'd inhabited at all.
I mean, you just said then about ballerinas, but what other characters, famous or not, did you encounter on that first night?
Well, there were Boy George's brother. I remember Kevin, I think his name was. The thing I remember most was that people were so friendly. People were. It was like you were in a club. That it was like you were in a clique. You were part of something that I'd never been part of, and people just treated you as an equal. The costumes, the outfits that people used to wear were kind of amazing. Uh, yeah, it was just a cast of characters, and a cast of characters that I'd not come across at all in my sheltered upbringing.
Photographing characters, whether they're famous or not, in a nightclub isn't easy with the lights, is it? With no lights,
No,
really.
well, I couldn't see anything. I mean, I just couldn't. I used to have to get people to kind of light a match and just hold it under their face while I focused. And I used to try and take them to an area that was a little bit lighter. That was often difficult because people just wanted to be in the VIP room, and that was the darkest room of all. It was all candle lit and very dimly lit, so that was always very difficult.
I
But
mean,
people were extraordinarily accommodating and very happy for me to be there. Nowadays everybody's got an iPhone and everybody's used to doing that kind of thing. But it was a thing to have a camera and to be asked to have a photograph taken.
I mean, for celebrities, if they go to a club, there's a sort of deal, isn't there? They know there's either going to be paps outside or there's going to be photographs inside, because if the club is holding a special event, particularly openings or whatever, the special event, then there's somewhat of a deal. Um, did you sort of said that it was a friendly atmosphere. Was that something that grew more friendly over time because they got to know you, or was it something that changed over an era?
Oh, definitely. I mean, don't forget, I was only there a year anyway. I only worked in the Limelight for a year. But yeah, no, definitely. They were, as I became more familiar with the people, as they became more familiar with me, they definitely warmed to me, and you build up a relationship with people, and yeah, it was just there. Well, like I said, it was this kind of a clique where everybody knew everybody and everybody was friendly to everybody, and especially if you were in the VIP room in the inner sanctum. I mean, the interesting point you make about this kind of trade-off, I didn't see it like that at all, and I don't think the celebs did. I think it's one thing being packed outside a nightclub, but you don't expect a photographer inside the nightclub. And I think that was one of the new grounds that the Limelight broke or introduced, was to have a house photographer inside. That was uncommon as far as I remember in those days.
I mean, because of the lighting angle, I'm just wondering if it was easy to be spontaneous or you had to be
No,
orchestrated in some
no,
way.
no, no, no. I couldn't really be spontaneous. I mean, there are a couple of occasions where I'm amazed when I look back at these photographs 40 years later. I'm amazed at how many are in focus, how sharp they are, how clear the composition. I'm really impressed, really impressed, um, because I was manually focusing. You couldn't pre-focus with a standard lens, so I had to manually focus the lens, and everything was really kind of pin sharp. I'm just really impressed.
Where was the point where you realized this was sort of, because you ended up working as a paparazzi, I believe. So this
Yeah.
was a sort of area that you wanted to go in. And where was the sort of moment where you realized, right, I could get these photos in the big newspapers at the time?
Well, when I sold one, my brother, we still can't remember how or why he sold it to the Sun newspaper. The thing about the tabloids in those days was you couldn't get a picture published in a tabloid in a national newspaper unless you're a member of the National Union of Journalists. And you couldn't be a member of the National Union of Journalists until you'd had a picture published in a paper. So I'm not quite sure how my brother managed it, but he got me £400 for a picture. I was being paid £25 a night, and then he got £400 for me, and I thought, right, well, this is what I want to do. But I mean, the truth is, I didn't set out to be a photographer at a nightclub, and I didn't set out to be a paparazzi photographer. It was all accidental. It all just happened. It was all organic. It's the kind of thing I'm not sure it could happen in the way it did. I just knew somebody that phoned me up and said, do you want to be the house photographer? You know, we need a house photographer just for one night. We just want one night. And that one night turned into a year. And during that time, well, I think when I sold that first picture to the Sun for £400, I kind of thought, well, I only come to the Limelight 2 nights a week, or I used to go 3 nights every fortnight. And I thought, well, actually, there's nothing to stop me going other nights to the Limelight or to other clubs or to restaurants or to find parties or events where I can get other pictures of other celebrities. And that's how it all kind of started.
That photo, that was of Andrew Ridgeley's girlfriend at the time, I believe.
Yeah, Donna Fiorentina, I think her name was.
Tell me, that photo's in the book, obviously. Tell me
Yeah.
about that photo. What do you feel makes it special? What makes it stand out?
Well, nothing. I mean, I mean, why the Sun kind of used it, page 2 on a news page opposite their famed page 3, I have absolutely no idea. Other than you just saw a little bit of the top of her nipple, of just the areola, but it wasn't sensational in any way. And I think the title they gave it was kind of peekaboo or something like that. You know, it was kind of slightly salacious, and of course she's very attractive. That's the only reason, you know, that's why they used it, as far as I can see.
I mean, he also says, something about the time, obviously Wham being enormous,
Yeah.
in that
Oh yeah,
period.
of course.
Of course, there's a pic of Boy George and George Michael together, which was the only picture of them together. Is that true?
Oh, I don't know. I have seen others, but it's the
Right.
best. It's the best picture of them. It's become iconic, really. It's one of my personal favourite pictures because it does, to me, sum up the 1980s perfectly. It's the two kings of pop, the two biggest cultural icons of the pop world of the 1980s together, which was a rare picture because apparently they hated each other. I don't know, but it was very, very rare to see those two together.
And stick with me to hear more from David Koppel about that time at the Limelight in 1986-87 to see more of those wonderful photos. Now, don't forget to like, subscribe, and please comment. Okay, back to David Koppel. When you went through the archive of your photos of that era, I mean, I'm presuming you hadn't looked back for a long time. You hadn't been in
No,
there for a
no,
long
no,
time.
no.
So what did it say to you about that era? And what sort of did it say to you about you?
What kind of surprised me looking back was how much fun everybody seemed to be, having everybody smoked. It really kind of showed me what London was like in those days and how London has changed more than how I've changed. I mean, I have developed. I've had this whole journey into different careers and different genres in photography. So, yes, of course, I've changed. I look back at it with enormous fondness, and the big regret for me, but this is in every aspect of photography that I've ever worked in, is that I didn't do enough. You know, I wish I had have done more generic pictures, more pictures of the unknown, unfamous people. I wish I had have done more pictures of the streets of London. I wish I had have done more days at the Limelight. I wish I had have gone around London and different clubs and photographed. I just wish I had have done more. That's the only thing it kind of showed me about me, I guess.
Was there any criteria that you used when you were choosing which photographs to use in this book, Limelight?
in the book. Oh, well, I could easily do another book with completely different pictures. It was really difficult. And of course, that every photographers are the worst people to edit their own work. I mean, if you chose the pictures for the book, Steve, you'd probably do something completely different. I have an emotion to every picture that I ever took. It's in my memory, it's stored, there's a feeling, there's something that goes with it. There's baggage that goes with every photograph that I take. What that is, I couldn't necessarily say, but there's definitely, when I'm looking at it through my own eyes with my own perception and my own emotional filter. And I can't necessarily name what that is, but certainly that was at play in choosing the pictures for the book.
Tell me about the cover.
Oh, just one of those lucky moments. So I tried to get the Beastie Boys are in the club, and I tried to do a picture of the two or three of them together, and they no, they were being difficult as they are. So I kind of photographed them individually, and then left the club when they were coming out and getting into a taxi. And of course, by that time there were loads of photographers, and there was kind of elbowing and pushing and shoving and fighting. And I couldn't see anything anyway, because it's all black, it's all dark, it's outside, it's on the street. You're looking through a cab window, it's black. And all you can see, all I could focus with, or the only way I could focus was by using the flash of everybody else's cameras, and you're jostling with other photographers, and bang, my flash or somebody else's flash hits one of the Beastie Boys. So he's bleached out, and it just means that the guy sticking his tongue out in perfect crystal clarity, sticking the finger up, and it's all pin sharp. I mean, it's just complete luck. You couldn't stage that, you couldn't set that up, I couldn't do that. If I did that 10 times, I'd probably only get that once, and that's it. Just pure luck. Pure luck.
Your book is like a sort of going through an exhibition in a way. It's giving you that moment of time of the limelight. And with a lot of people um, that were famous at the time, some of them who have passed, but they're very much sort of an image of the time. When you went through it, and you saw pictures of like Robbie Coltrane, Lemmy. I saw other pictures of Dolph Lundgren, of David Soul, all people very connected to a specific um, era. Was that in any way an emotional experience because you had contact with these people, or was the contact so minimal that for you it was just also the same, looking at a particular era?
Yeah, I'd say the contact with these people was minimal. I mean, I love it because people look at the photographs, they go, "Oh, you met Iggy Pop?" Well, kind of, "Oh, you met George Michael?" Well, kind of, I mean, he won't remember me. We didn't have a conversation. But what really struck me when I went through and when I put the book together was the amount of famous faces that I photographed at the Limelight Club, because I didn't realize how many, and the kind of depth of kind of people that I photographed. And you mentioned, like, I mean, I'm flicking through it now. The Beastie Boys, Julian Lennon, Eddie Kidd, uh, Sham 69, Johnny Rotten, Lemmy, Nigel Planer, Steve Strange, Boy George, John Moss, Fine Young Cannibals, Brett Eklund, Robbie Coltrane, Mel Smith, Leigh Bowery, Marilyn, it just loads of them, loads of Erasure, and I couldn't believe, looking through, what a kind of diverse range of people, and that was all just in one year. I mean, I was really kind of gobsmacked.
I want to read something to you. It was from Huck magazine about the book. You probably read it
Okay,
yourself. But it says the book is positioned more as a social cultural history of that moment in London nightlife
yeah,
rather than purely celebrity glamour. And it is,
absolutely,
isn't it? It
yeah,
really is
absolutely,
that.
absolutely. Yeah, it's like a snapshot. It's like going back in time. It's like a snapshot to a lost world. I'm very kind of interested in lost worlds and things that are no longer alive, things that are no longer relevant, things that are no longer around. And that is like taking a snapshot of London in 1986.
And it's also, you sort of hinted at this, it's also a commentary on where we are today, sort of how
Yeah,
nightlife,
yeah.
celebrity, photography, even, how that's all changed.
Which I
So,
don't, I don't do this kind of work anymore. Uh, so I don't know exactly, but I see on Instagram, I see kind of I just happened to look the other day. There was kind of some paps photographed in Justin Bieber, and they were all shouting at each other, and it was just horrible. I mean, it just looked awful. Just looked absolutely awful. There's a certain, you use the word naivety, but there's a certain charm, I would say, to the kind of work that I was doing, and it wasn't as ruthless and cutthroat and kind of horrible as it is now, as I see it. And the people that I was photographing, I like to think, were real celebrities. I mean, they were famous for doing something really well. Whereas now you get all these kind of influencers and Instagrammers and people that you've never heard of, and Love Island stars and reality TV stars that I have no interest in whatsoever. I mean, if I'm going to get whacked, I don't mind getting whacked by David Bowie or Mick Jagger, but I'm not interested in being whacked by somebody from EastEnders or Love Island or one of these non-entities that whose name I just have no idea who they are. So yeah, I mean that aspect has changed, and I think that the kind of the the photographers used to be somebody in their own right. They were named and known by the celebrities, but I think they're all anonymous now, as far as I know.
were there any photographs that you looked through that you felt like, oh no, I I feel like I shouldn't show this photograph?
No, no, I never think that about any of the pictures that I took on a professional basis. I'm talking about, not personally, on a professional basis.
You mentioned sort of the issue of integrity and this moral dilemma that you could be in. But because you're taking photographs of people that have agreed, because if they're going to light a match and they're going to, generally they're sort of, I would think, mainly agreeing to the photograph. Were there any sort of moral issues in your head in terms of taking photographs of people that don't know they're going to be taken?
Never, 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 never. No, I was kind of ruthless and relentless in my pursuit of the shot. And I would do anything. I'd cross any line. I'd go anywhere. I'd do whatever I had to do to get the shot. There was no morality to it whatsoever. You kind of hinted at this idea that it's a trade-off. The celebrities go out, they're famous, they go somewhere public. I mean, I'm talking about public places. I wouldn't intrude on someone's private property. I'd sneak into a public arena to photograph somebody, but I would never cross the line of into private spaces. So that was never an agenda for me. I never, there was never any moral issue about somebody being in public and having their photograph taken, whether they wanted it or not.
I mean, you mentioned Leigh Bowery, of course, one of the most sort of famous sideshows
Yeah,
of the 80s in London. An amazing figure and a central point of clubland, really, in that era. What for you was the most interesting character that you photographed that's in the book?
well, probably Leigh Bowery. I mean, he was so photogenic, and he used to come in with different outfits all the time. I photographed him quite a few times, and I loved it because he was just so game. He just kind of would switch on and do something really funny, or bend over into an arch, and some of the outfits he wore were just absolutely crazy. The other one I loved photographing that I thought was great was Zodiac Mind Warp, and he gave me some of my best shots because he was. I don't know whether it was an act or not, but he appeared to be off his head most of the time, and there's a great shot of him. He's at a table with kind of 50 empty bottles, and he's making a kind of a grimace face. And he was great. They're picking each other's noses, and it's just such a kind of silly thing to be doing. But it's the first picture he's kissing him on the cheek, and then the next picture they've got a finger up each other's noses, and I just love that kind of thing. I wouldn't have asked them to do that. With Leigh Bowery, I never posed anybody. With those kind of people, they just perform, and they're great to photograph, and they want to be photographed.
The two guys at the front, are they the bouncers?
Yeah. So as you open the book, you got two of the bouncers kind of standing there. Again, I mean, look how that's changed. You now got these kind of licensed bouncers with kind of these ID things on their armband, and I mean, there were quite a few bouncers and security guys. There's a picture of all of them in the book as well.
So, David, where can we get the book? Where is it on sale? And
on my website. On my website, go to davidkoppel.co.uk, or you can go to pap-art.co.uk. Just Google Limelight book by David Koppel, and you'll find it. And it's £60, and it's worth every penny.
Up there is an interview I recommend. Down there is where you can find all the podcast interviews. And here is where you can connect.